Hombre wasn't just another Western in the dying days of the genre. It was a brutal deconstruction of American racism, greed, and moral cowardice. A film where its star battled alcoholism behind the scenes, where its director was blacklisted during Hollywood's darkest era, where real-life tensions between cast members erupted into open hostility. What audiences saw in 1967 was a stark, unforgiving story of a white man raised by Apaches who confronts the worst of humanity on a stagecoach journey through the desert. What they didn't know was that behind the camera, the production was a pressure cooker of resentment, where the film's cynical worldview bled into reality, where personal demons haunted the cast, and where the darkness on screen was just a reflection of the darkness in Hollywood itself. This is the full story of Hombre, the Western that held up a mirror to America's soul, and the reflection was horrifying. Here are 15 dark facts about the film that exposed Hollywood's hypocrisy, and stick around for a bonus fact about the alternate ending that was too bleak even for this film. Hit that subscribe button, and let's descend into the desert of human depravity. Number 15. Paul Newman's secret struggle. Paul Newman wasn't just playing a man wrestling with his identity, he was fighting his own demons during production. By 1967, Newman's battle with alcoholism was reaching its peak. Cast and crew members recall days when the star would arrive on set reeking of liquor, his hands trembling, his eyes bloodshot but still piercingly blue. Director Ritt, a close friend, developed a system of shooting around Newman's drinking, scheduling the most emotionally intense scenes for mornings when Newman was relatively clear, and saving simpler shots for later in the day when the actor was often heavily intoxicated. What audiences see as John Russell's haunted, detached demeanor is often Newman genuinely struggling to maintain composure. The irony is brutal. Newman was portraying a man caught between two worlds, while he himself was trapped between his public image as a Hollywood hero and his private hell as an alcoholic. His performance is so powerful precisely because it's not entirely acting, it's a raw, unfiltered glimpse into a man in pain, blurring the line between character and actor in ways that make the film almost uncomfortable to watch. Number 14. The Blacklisted Director's Revenge. Ritt wasn't just a director making a Western. He was a survivor of Hollywood's blacklist, exacting revenge on the industry that had tried to destroy him. Ritt, along with writer Irving Ravitch, had been blacklisted during the Red Scare of the 1950s for alleged communist sympathies. When they returned to make films in the 1960s, they infused their work with themes of injustice, persecution, and institutional corruption. Hombre is their most pointed critique of American society. The film's villainous characters aren't just individuals. They represent the system that had persecuted Ritt and his colleagues. The bigoted Indian agent, the greedy businessman, the morally bankrupt citizens, they're all stand-ins for the Hollywood establishment that had ruined careers and lives. Ritt wasn't just directing a film, he was using the Western genre to expose the hypocrisy of American capitalism and Puritanism. What audiences didn't realize was that they were watching a deeply personal allegory about the witch hunts of the 1950s. Disguised as a Western, the film's bleak ending, where goodness is punished and evil triumphs, reflects Ritt's own cynical view of American justice, a system that rewards the powerful and crushes the principled. Number 13. The real-life cast tensions. The animosity between characters in Hombre wasn't just acting. The set was a powder keg of real resentments, particularly between Paul Newman and Richard Boone, who played the villainous Cicero Grimes. The two actors had fundamentally different approaches to their craft and clashed repeatedly during filming. Boone, a seasoned character actor with a reputation for intensity, found Newman's method acting pretentious. Newman, in turn, considered Boone old-fashioned and criticized his tendency to dominate scenes with theatrical flourishes. Their arguments often escalated to shouting matches, with director Ritt having to intervene. The tension is palpable in their scenes together, especially during the final confrontation. What appears on screen as authentic antagonism between hero and villain is actually two actors who genuinely couldn't stand each other. The crew lived in fear of Boone's volatile temper and Newman's sullen withdrawal when drinking. The film's dark themes of human conflict were amplified by the real conflict happening just off camera, creating a level of authenticity that no script could achieve. Number 12. The Native American casting controversy. Hombre presents itself as a critique of racism against Native Americans, but behind the camera, the production was engaging in its own form of racial exploitation. Despite the film's progressive themes, almost no actual Native American actors were cast in significant roles. The Apache characters, including John Russell's adoptive family, were portrayed by Hispanic or white actors in makeup. This hypocrisy wasn't lost on everyone involved. Frank Silvera, a Jamaican-American actor of mixed heritage who played the Mexican bandit, privately criticized the casting decisions as Hollywood liberalism at its most transparent, saying one thing and doing another. The production justified its choices by claiming there weren't enough trained Native American actors, but this was the same excuse used for decades to exclude minority performers. The film's message about prejudice against Native Americans was delivered through a lens of white appropriation, a dark irony that undercut its moral authority. What audiences saw as a progressive statement was, in reality, another example of Hollywood using minority stories without employing minority talent. Number 11. The dangerous stunt that almost killed. The scene where John Russell, Paul Newman, rides his horse down a steep mountainside wasn't just a movie stunt. It was a life-threatening moment that nearly ended in tragedy. Newman, determined to do as many of his own stunts as possible, insisted on performing the dangerous descent himself. The first attempt ended in disaster when the horse lost its footing, sending both animal and actor tumbling down the rocky slope. The horse suffered severe injuries and had to be euthanized, while Newman was left with bruises, cuts, and a dislocated shoulder that he tried to hide from the crew. The production was nearly shut down as animal welfare organizations threatened to intervene. Newman's wife, Joanne Woodward, flew to the location and begged him to stop risking his life. The scene that appears in the film is actually the second take, with a professional stuntman doubling for Newman in the most dangerous shots. The dark truth is that an animal died for this shot, and the star's ego almost cost him his life. What audiences see as thrilling action is the result of a tragic accident that cast a shadow over the remainder of the production. Number 10. The writer's personal demons. Screenwriter Irving Ravech wasn't just adapting Elmore Leonard's novel. He was channeling his own pain and bitterness into the script. Ravech, like his collaborator Martin Ritt, had been blacklisted during the Red Scare, and the experience had left him deeply cynical about American society. He poured this cynicism into every line of dialogue, particularly the exchanges that exposed the characters' hypocrisy and prejudice. But there was a darker, personal element at play. Ravech's marriage was crumbling during the writing process, and he was engaging in self-destructive behavior that worried his friends. The film's bleak worldview, where goodness is futile and corruption is rewarded, reflects Ravech's own emotional state at the time. He later confessed that writing Hombre was a form of therapy, a way to process his disillusionment with both Hollywood and his personal life. What audiences didn't realize was that they were watching not just a critique of American society, but a cry of pain from a man who had lost faith in everything except the truth of his own bitterness. The film's unrelenting darkness comes directly from Ravech's soul, laid bare on the page. Number 9. The censorship battle over racism. Hombre faced an unexpected battle with the Motion Picture Association Ratings Board over its depiction of racism. The board, dominated by conservative executives, objected to scenes where white characters use racial slurs against Native Americans and where the film explicitly calls out American hypocrisy. They demanded cuts that would soften the racial elements, arguing that the film was too inflammatory for mainstream audiences. Director Martin Ritt and producer Irving Ravech refused, engaging in a bitter fight with the censors. The irony was rich. A film about prejudice was itself being subjected to prejudice. The standoff lasted for weeks, with the film's release date hanging in the balance. Eventually, a compromise was reached where some of the most explicit language was toned down, but the core critique of racism remained intact. This battle left everyone involved disillusioned with the Hollywood establishment. What audiences saw as a bold statement against racism was actually a watered-down version of what the filmmakers had intended. The original cut, which has never been released, was reportedly even more scathing in its indictment of American society. Number 8. The location's dark history. The Arizona desert where Hombre was filmed wasn't just a backdrop. It was a place with its own tragic history that cast a shadow over the production. The primary location, Canyon de Chelly, had been the site of actual massacres of Navajo people by the U.S. Army in the 1860s. Local Native American advisors hired for the film expressed discomfort with filming there, noting that the ground was essentially a sacred burial site. These concerns were dismissed by the production as sentimental obstacles to getting the perfect shot. During filming, several strange incidents occurred that crew members attributed to the location's dark history, equipment malfunctioning for no apparent reason, animals becoming agitated, and a persistent feeling of being watched that unnerved even the most skeptical crew members. The most disturbing incident involved a film canister that supposedly contained footage of the Apache camp scenes. When developed, the footage showed mysterious figures standing at the edge of the frame that no one had seen during filming. The incident was dismissed as a developing error, but it left many wondering if they had disturbed something ancient and powerful. The film's themes of violence against Native Americans took on an eerie resonance in a place where such violence had actually occurred. Number 7. The stagecoach's hidden danger. The iconic stagecoach that serves as the film's primary setting wasn't just a prop, it was a genuine antique from the 1880s with a deadly secret. During restoration, the production team discovered that the coach's frame had been reinforced with lead paint and other toxic materials common in the 19th century, but now known to be hazardous. The discovery came too late to replace the coach, as it was central to the film's visual identity. Instead, the crew was instructed to minimize time spent inside the coach between takes. What audiences don't realize is that the cast was essentially being poisoned slowly throughout filming. Several actors reported feeling unwell during the production, with symptoms including headaches, dizziness, and nausea, classic signs of lead poisoning. The most severely affected was Diane Salento, who played the wife of the Indian agent. She later attributed the respiratory problems she developed after filming to the toxic coach. The dark irony is that while the film was exposing the poison of racism in American society, the cast was literally being poisoned by the very set they were working on. The stagecoach that carried them through the desert was also carrying them toward health problems they wouldn't discover until years later. Number 6. The real-life model for Grimes. Cicero Grimes, the film's charismatic villain, wasn't just a creation of Elmore Leonard's imagination. He was based on a real person from Arizona's violent past, a cattle rustler and hired gun named Jack McKenzie, who was known for his charm and lack of conscience. Martin Ritt, fascinated by the complexity of real villains, researched McKenzie extensively and incorporated several of his actual exploits into the script. What makes this connection particularly dark is that McKenzie was still alive when the film was made, albeit very old and living in obscurity. Richard Boone, who played Grimes, requested to meet the real McKenzie to better understand his character. The meeting was arranged, and Boone spent an afternoon with the aging outlaw, listening to stories of his violent past. What Boone discovered chilled him to the bone. McKenzie showed no remorse for his crimes, speaking of murder and theft as casually as discussing the weather. This encounter informed Boone's performance, giving Grimes a chilling authenticity that goes beyond typical movie villainy. The character audiences loved to hate was based on a man who had actually lived without conscience for decades, a dark reminder that evil isn't just a creation of fiction. Number 5. The censored rape scene. The film's most disturbing scene, where the Indian agent attempts to rape Audra, was originally much more explicit and brutal. The version that appears in the final film is already shocking for its time, but the original cut showed the assault in greater detail, including the agent tearing at the woman's clothes and using more graphic language. Test screenings caused walkouts and several viewers fainted. The studio panicked, demanding the scene be cut entirely. Martin Ritt fought to keep it, arguing that it was essential to establish the agent's depravity and justify John Russell's later actions. A compromise was reached where the scene was trimmed but not eliminated. What audiences didn't see was the full extent of the violence that Ritt had captured. The deleted footage, which still exists in the Fox archives, is reportedly so brutal that it would likely earn an NC-17 rating even today. The dark truth is that the film's exploration of human depravity went much further than what audiences were allowed to see. The censored version, while still disturbing, was only a glimpse into the darkness that Ritt had originally intended to show. Number 4. The financial ruin behind the scenes. Hombre wasn't just a critical success, it was a financial catastrophe that ruined careers behind the scenes. Despite positive reviews and decent box office, the film went wildly over budget due to the difficult location shooting and the need to reshoot several scenes after Paul Newman's accident. The financial losses fell hardest on the film's producers, particularly Hal Wallace, who had gambled heavily on the project. Wallace, a legendary producer who had worked with everyone from Humphrey Bogart to Elvis Presley, never recovered from the loss. His production company was forced into bankruptcy, and he spent his remaining years working for other studios rather than running his own operation. What audiences saw as another Paul Newman hit was actually the film that ended a producing career. The dark irony is that a movie about the consequences of greed and financial ruin had those very consequences in real life. Wallace, like many characters in the film, found himself destroyed by the very system he had participated in for decades. The financial failure of Hombre sent a chill through Hollywood, serving as a warning that even star power couldn't always guarantee success in the changing landscape of 1960s cinema. Number 3. Newman's marriage on the brink. While Paul Newman was playing a man struggling with his identity and relationships, his real-life marriage to Joanne Woodward was on the verge of collapse during filming. Newman's drinking had become so severe that Woodward had given him an ultimatum: get sober or face divorce. The tension between them was palpable to anyone who visited the set. Woodward, who was a successful actress in her own right, had put her career on hold to support Newman's, and she was growing increasingly resentful of his self-destructive behavior. She flew to the Arizona location multiple times, not for romantic visits, but for tense discussions about their future. What makes this particularly dark is that Newman's performance as John Russell, a man isolated by his background and unable to connect with others, was enhanced by his real emotional state. He was genuinely isolated, genuinely struggling with relationships, genuinely wrestling with his identity as a man who couldn't fit comfortably anywhere. The film's themes of alienation and disconnection weren't just acting choices, they were reflections of Newman's actual life crisis. What audiences saw as powerful acting was, in reality, a man laying his personal pain bare on screen. Number 2. The alternate ending too dark to release. The ending of Hombre is already bleak for a mainstream film. John Russell is gunned down after sacrificing himself for others, and the villains escape with the money. But the original ending was even darker. In the first version, after Russell is killed, the remaining characters are shown years later, still struggling in poverty and despair. The villainous Cicero Grimes has become a wealthy businessman, respected in society. The Indian agent continues his predatory behavior. The good characters who survived are shown to have gained nothing from their brief encounter with righteousness. Test audiences found this ending overwhelmingly depressing, and studio executives demanded it be changed. Martin Ritt reluctantly agreed to film the current ending, which at least offers some small measure of justice as the stagecoach continues its journey with the good characters. The original footage, which has never been released publicly, reportedly includes a final shot of Grimes laughing as he counts his money in a luxurious office, a direct indictment of American capitalism that was too radical even for 1967. The dark truth is that the film's critique of society was originally even more scathing but was softened to make it palatable to audiences who wanted at least some glimmer of hope. Number 1. The Real Apache Curse. The most chilling aspect of Hombre production was the series of misfortunes that befell cast and crew members after filming, which some attributed to an Apache curse. During production, the film crew had inadvertently filmed part of a sacred Apache ceremony without permission. Local tribal elders warned that this would bring bad luck, but these warnings were dismissed by the production team. In the years following the film's release, an unusually high number of people involved in the production experienced serious misfortunes. Paul Newman's drinking worsened, leading to a separation from Joanne Woodward. Martin Ritt's health declined, and he made only 3 more films before his death. Several crew members experienced career setbacks, financial problems, or health issues. What makes this particularly eerie is that these misfortunes disproportionately affected those who had been directly involved in filming the sacred ceremony. While rational explanations can be offered for each individual case, the pattern of misfortune was striking enough that even skeptical crew members privately wondered if they had indeed disturbed something they shouldn't have. The film's exploration of Native American spirituality and revenge took on a haunting quality in light of these real-world events, creating a dark legacy that extended far beyond the movie itself. Bonus fact: the hidden Holocaust connection. The most shocking secret about Hombre is its hidden connection to the Holocaust. Martin Ritt and Irving Ravitch, both Jewish and both affected by the blacklist, embedded subtle Holocaust imagery throughout the film. The scene where the stagecoach passengers are forced to hand over their valuables mirrors Nazi looting of Jewish property. The character of John Russell, a man separated from his people and forced to hide his identity, represents the Jewish experience in Europe during the 1930s. The most powerful and disturbing parallel is in the final scene where Russell is shot while protecting others, a direct reference to the righteous Gentiles who died trying to save Jews during the Holocaust. These references were intentionally subtle, as Ritt and Ravitch knew that explicit Holocaust imagery would be rejected by studios and audiences in 1967. What makes this connection particularly dark is that the film was marketed as a simple Western when it was actually a complex allegory about one of the greatest tragedies in human history. The film's title itself, Hombre, takes on new meaning when understood as a statement about human cruelty and resilience in the face of persecution. This hidden layer gives the film a depth and darkness that most viewers completely missed, making it not just a Western but a profound meditation on the human capacity for both evil and sacrifice. Hombre endures not as just another Western, but as a searing indictment of the American soul. It is a film born from the pain of blacklisted artists, the personal demons of its star, and the collective guilt of a nation confronting its history of racism and violence. Every frame carries the weight of real suffering both on screen and behind the camera. The film's commercial failure and controversial legacy are its final, fitting testament to a Hollywood that wasn't ready to face its own reflection. Martin Ritt and Paul Newman set out to make a Western, but they accidentally created a horror film about the darkness within American society itself. The lesson of Hombre is that sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't found in the desert, but in the hearts of ordinary people.